Welcome to Never Too Serious with Scott and Dave. I'm Scott.
And I'm Dave.
Dave, you want to talk a little bit about green?
I know. I'm wondering, what's the cost or what's it take to make America green?
Mm-hmm.
I notice that everybody wants to go a certain path, make this country a green country. Green meaning, sustainable, using sustainable resources.
Okay. Are you thinking like moving away from fossil fuels?
Well, that or, stuff that's recyclable, all that stuff. We have the wind, people are talking about, solar instead of using,
coal to generate power.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And windmills and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so what intrigued me is I was watching numerous times I've seen this and I'm like, I got to figure this out. They were talking about, windmills and, the blades on the windmills and they deteriorate.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't even been out there that long, really, truly, in the scheme of these. And I'm talking those large windmills they're more than a couple of semi trucks long.
Yeah.
Well, they have these burial grounds that they put them in to bury them when they're
no longer usable.
No longer usable.
I wonder what makes them no longer usable.
I wonder that too, because I would think that they should be able to last for eternity.
My guess is, if you think in like the airline industry, if you have some structural issues, you don't want that thing out anywhere that it could fall apart in mid-flight. I'm guessing that there's probably structural issues with these blades because those things move fast. It doesn't look from a distance like they're moving very fast.
They're that large.
Yeah.
And they're just...
Yeah, the ends of those things are covering some ground.
Moving.
Yeah. My guess is there's probably some sort of structural problem or
some chips that start... Yeah. But there's stacks of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking like hundreds. And I don't think they're like rated to deteriorate in 100 years. I'm talking, are they ever going to deteriorate? I don't know. But still, it's the cost of going, quote, green. And it seems like that some things to make us go, quote, again, green, costs the environment heavily.
Just the Google is telling me that these blades are generally designed for 20 years to a 25-year life expectancy.
So
that surprises me. Meaning short. I just think 20 years is a short time.
Right. So that also means that some of them go sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Like example, when you get your roof on your house, you go, do you want a 15-year roof, a 30-year, or a 40-year roof?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went and got a 40-year roof in hopes that it lasts 30. Because I know it's not going to last when you think they're going to.
Depending on the environment,
right?
Yeah.
But they say they're going to last. So they seem to deteriorate.
Mm-hmm.
That apparently is a big word for me. to where they're having to dispose of them frequently.
I'm curious about a recycling program for those blades, though. I'm sure there's some materials that they can pull off and reuse, but to what extent, I don't even know.
Frankly, I don't even know what they're made out of, to be honest with you. But I just keep seeing like the burial grounds of them, and I'm like, wow, that blows me away. And another example of when things go away, when people talk about recycling vehicles, it's like a boneyard of cars. That it goes to they're just huge masses of fields of broken down cars. For airplanes, there is, I can't even remember.
Some graveyards out there.
Arizona. I can't remember where it is, but there's these graveyards of airplanes that are just huge. They don't go away. Some of these things are not meant to.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, what are we doing to make it to make the world more efficient and to make it better for the environment? Are we just covering it up,
or just an exchange, one cost for another cost?
Right.
I was looking just at the wind turbine. What does it cost to have a wind turbine? They're saying between $2 and $4 million.
Wow.
That seems really excessive, especially if you're looking at a 20-year life expectancy or something.
Right.
And then who knows? I mean, the additional maintenance they're talking about $40 to almost $50,000 per year per wind turbine to maintain.
That's amazing.
That seems pretty costly to me.
I know I was driving up the Gorge a few years back, and I've seen a few of them off to the distance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess. I don't know. I didn't count them, but probably 6 to 15.
Okay.
Probably more than 6, but all right, 6 to 15. I thought, man, that's like, I'm glad to know that. That's millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And, each one of those blades they've got to be close to $1 million,
Yeah.
But who cares? They're hundreds of thousands of dollars for the blades. And also the funny thing is I didn't see any of them ever moving.
So if you, those listening who are not from the Northwest, we have the Columbia River Gorge, which is the Columbia River. It runs, I want to say it's from Canada. It runs down through state of Washington, and then eventually it creates the border between Oregon and Washington. And that gorge acts like a wind tunnel. And in fact, one of the best windsurfing places in the world happens to be just not too far from us in Hood River, Oregon. And so the wind kicks up through there really, really well. In our area in Portland, the east wind comes down the gorge and it freezes us in the wintertime. It's a horrible
it could be brutal.
combination of circumstances, but it's a great place for wind energy through that area. But it's true, the wind doesn't blow all the time, and for that space being a place where the wind is more frequent than other parts of the of the states, for you to go through and not see some spinning is not rare. I mean, you'll see that just driving along the gorge, the I-84.
Millions of dollars of inefficiency.
Yeah, well, and I wonder, I trust us, we're not experts in this particular area, but I wonder about certain times where it is really windy and they have to turn those machines off because they're producing too much in this short little period of time.
I would hope that could be a problem, because when I was driving by going, oh my gosh, are these things even helping? And who are they helping? And who paid for them to not be working today? I mean, it's baffling to me, because I don't know how they work. Maybe they shut them down because they met their goal of what they need.
I wonder if it's pushing
I don't know
too
if
much.
That's the case, but
yeah, I mean, maybe it's pushing too much energy into the grid.
I'm a hydronuclear kind of a guy myself.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is an interesting one. We were talking about electric cars and how really not green they are.
Right.
The batteries, Tesla has an amazing process for their vehicles, the manufacturing process and their batteries. I was at the Tesla shop recently to get some hardware upgrades to the computer in the car. And I was like, hey, what does it take to replace a battery pack in this thing? Oh, well,
14, 15 grand.
Well, and they said that it's going down, and I have an older model Tesla. They said it's kind of going down because more of the older model Teslas are their batteries are now being recycled, reconditioned, and reused. They said 90% of the battery pack is recyclable, meaning they can recondition it and then put it into another car. I thought, that's kind of an interesting, more efficient way
that's good,
of doing it.
I've heard some bad things about what they do with the batteries from the Teslas.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there's a lot of battery technology out there that to get rid of the battery, to go through the recycling process and separate out whatever it's made out of, can actually be harder to do and harder in the environment than the fossil fuel burning, the CO2 and carbon monoxide that might be going into the atmosphere.
Coal and all that stuff was the best in the whole in the beginning. I mean, I know that there's a lot of consequence to it. I get that, but to make the battery alone, there's so much drilling and destroying of the land,
the minerals to get the ingredients for the batteries.
Right.
Yeah.
And I read something somewhere that people were discussing that, this is done in other countries. So, you could put a blindfold over your eyes. Like, I don't get to see it. So therefore, it doesn't exist. and we get the benefit, but it's one planet, so we should care about what happens somewhere else to benefit ourselves. So I was curious, like, for us to go, quote, green, to get electric cars, because I know that's a big push for a lot of people. And I think electric cars are cool as hell myself, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to get one perhaps one of these days, but not because I care about making it green, just like a regular, just like it's another car I want to get. I don't go get another car or vehicles that I've ever bought because I cared about the environment, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I care about the environment, but never did I go buy a vehicle because I was trying to, I don't know, save a tree or care about the air.
You care about how it looks, how it performs.
Getting back and forth to work or the safety,
Yeah.
if it lasts a while. But when people are discussing that what it takes to get what the minerals that it takes to make the battery, what they have to do to the environment to get that there, and then what it takes to make the electricity to fuel those batteries repeatedly. And most people uses coal to make the electricity to power their vehicles. I know that there's some things in play trying to use solar to power them, but it's not something that's what's the word?
It's not efficient.
It's not there for everybody to use. Everybody just uses the regular power outlets that you have, or that people have around, and that's generated by mostly coal.
Yeah,
and so
we have a lot of hydro in our area, but
sure. But so we're still using what people are concerned for with polluting the air, and then maybe even some more stuff by making the batteries themselves.
Well, but to your point, thinking about the environmental costs of, like, I've got some pictures here of lithium farming where they're stripping the land. There's huge swaths of land that they have to use to, filter out the different materials. And they're really interesting pictures because they're very, very colorful. They go through these different processes. But it's toxic to people.
Sure.
And so there's a human cost in trying to get the resources available to do this. Then there's the environmental cost that is the using of the land, and then the disposal afterwards.
Well, I just to be parallel, I get that coal is too. Coal has been killed, the black lung or whatever they call it.
Zoolander.
Sorry,
I think I've got the black. Is it? They call it the black lung.
Sorry, that's funny to me. But I know that it's not good for people. That are. I'm sure I imagine they have things, respirators and stuff that helps people out these days. But you don't have to take a canary down down the hole to make sure it's breathable. But poor little canary.
Yeah.
But there's other things involved in it too now, and
well, there's always a cost in any of these. I mean, drilling for oil, fracking. There's a
watch your mouth.
Yeah, there's some environmental costs, but you're trying to like balance these things, and I think in the United States we're trying to balance what these different costs are.
We used to try to balance it.
Well, what's crazy to me is that everyone is so worried about CO2 in the environment because people are saying that the CO2 in the environment has a direct impact on the temperature rise of our climate, and then there's all these other things they call climate change, which is like just any variation, any change is climate change, and I don't know how much of those models are really that accurate. Way back when, oh gosh, what was the climate documentary? Oh my gosh.
Are you asking me a question?
Yeah.
Oh,
Al Gore did a documentary. What was it called? Listen, I got the Google here.
Yeah, look it up because I can't remember what they called it back then.
Yeah, Inconvenient Truth.
Oh.
It's an inconvenient truth, and that was his first one. And he did, I want to say he did a follow up on it as well. But he was talking. He had this big old graph that, by 2000 something or rather, like the temperature rise in the world would be several degrees, and we would have rises in sea levels that would cover like Miami or whatever.
Right.
And those predictions didn't come true, and there's some other ones in there, but some of his predictions did come true, have come true. But the thing is, again, we're kind of like trying to balance some stuff here. And so if we want to have, let's just say the United States go to electric cars, I don't know that there's even enough minerals to create the batteries to replace the current fleet of cars just in the United States, let alone the rest of the world.
I don't know if we would have the ability to energize them.
Yeah, well, with all the changes in creation of electricity, nuclear is like, it's the most effective, most efficient way of producing electricity. But there's this huge fear for that technology that,
when shit hits the fan, it hits the fan.
Well, but the thing is, the technology, a lot of people's fear when they're talking about that is from a bomb, which had devastating effects.
Have you watched Chernobyl?
And then there's Chernobyl, and I want to say that was in, gosh, when was that? Was that in the 80s?
And they're still concerned about it now.
When did Chernobyl?
Now that the Russia-Ukraine situation is going on, they're worried that they're going to be kicking up some more radiation because of the wars. Because guess what? When like I said, when shit hits the fan, it hits the fan for many, 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 many years.
So Chernobyl,
thousands.
Chernobyl in 1986 is when Chernobyl had its meltdown. But here's the thing. Oh gosh, I want to make sure I get the right numbers here, because the death toll just from all nuclear. Am I saying it right? Nuclear.
Sounds good to me.
The death toll for that is far less than even like solar panels from, because people fall off a roof and during the installation process, there's a death rate associated with that. Now with nuclear, it's interesting because it's so stable, like it's so well controlled. The materials that would come out as byproduct of creating that electricity, the spent rods or whatever they're using these days, can be used for other purposes. There's some amount of recycling that they can do and reuse in other processes, and then there's the amount that actually gets basically stored, the radioactive material that gets stored. But the thing is, it's so small, it doesn't take up a lot of space. Now, the space that it does take up, I think, bury it in lead or whatever it is, but it doesn't take up a lot of space.
Right.
So the amount of waste that comes along with it, and then the human cost to it is actually extremely low compared to any other method of electricity, including, we're talking about wind, including wind. And with Chernobyl, it said, I want to say, here's an article. It says that 31 people have died from Chernobyl. That seems like a low number to me.
What?
They said potentially 4,000 people have been impacted by it. But as a direct result of its meltdown, the number of people is actually really low.
I thought there was far more people because people were involved, and it was a slow. The information was getting out slowly.
Yeah. So
people that had issues from it was long term, not right away.
Yeah, well, that's true. Because there's a lot of cancers and stuff from radioactivity. So I'm reading this from, it's ourworlddata.org, and they say 31 people died as a direct result of Chernobyl's accident. 2 died from the blast effects, and a further 29 firemen died as a result of the acute radiation exposure.
I want to tell you, if that's true, then let's do it. And that's worth it, right?
And then,
that's worse than that's better than a freaking 5 o'clock traffic.
Yes. Yeah. As long as you're not looking at the people who have been damaged by it with cancer and other
Right.
things, because then there's the psychological, emotional toll that will take.
Well, I will say this, but to be fair, this is back in the 80s, correct?
Yeah.
So this is 20-something. So there's a lot of safety things that have been put in place that would make it a lot safer.
Oh yeah, and some of the plants you can generate a lot of electricity in a smaller plant.
Homer Simpson can handle the situation and not kill. Well, I guess he might have killed a couple people.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
Hey, Mr. Burns is still alive.
Yeah, well,
and he's there every day.
He hasn't gotten sued, but
yeah, in 1986 is when this thing.
But I think
down.
there's something to it, though. You know, to be able to make energy from very little. I mean, that much energy from very little, I will say. I mean, I understand nuclear, I get it, but not everything that has been used as I'll just say it this way, as a negative means that it's a negative. And just as anything else from coal or any other way, there could be some negatives involved, but maybe some of those don't produce as much. So, I mean, there's a lot of weighing it out, but
let's go back to the original question, which is how could the United States go green? I mean, current methods, I would say the most green methods would be nuclear.
But for real, though.
And hydro to create electricity, because there's a lot of universal, uses for electricity. No matter how it's getting created, once it's converted into electricity, you can use it on so many different things. But the other is like our vehicles. The majority of vehicles are still, even with the growth of electrical and hybrid, the majority of the vehicles are going to be based on fossil fuels.
So do you remember? Now, I know that example is our kids will never be able to remember this. But when I was a kid, and I know you're a little bit younger than me, so maybe you didn't witness it or recognize it or give a damn about it. But when I was a kid, and I don't want to say, I can't guess how many blah, blah, blah cars out of 10 was like this, but I want to say that there was 2 out of 10 cars that always had smoke barreling out of the back end of it. I had a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, they were just jacked up. They weren't working right. And so just, I'm not kidding you, burning smoke.
Yeah.
And it would fill up the intersections. But it was all the time. Every time I would be sitting behind a car and it just stinks so bad. It is so rare right now as we speak. And I'm not talking about electric cars. Electric cars are so very few right now. But things are so much more efficient than they have been when I was a kid that it's impressive, really, that they've gone away with either their laws where cops will actually pull your ass over when your car is smoking as bad as one of mine was. I got to tell you, I had a Mazda RX-7. It was in the 80s. And your brother and I, we'd roll around and that thing would backfire so much. We would duck and cover because we thought somebody was shooting at us. And it was by our own car. But it was also smoking so bad that at an intersection, we would get out of the car and step out because it would feel the whole car was full of smoke. It's so bad.
That is really bad.
That we would get out of the car until it turned green and we'd jump in and go. But still,
it's like Cheech and Chong.
but nowadays that would not fly. That's my point. And it shouldn't have flown then.
Yeah.
But because we have a different expectation of what is acceptable out on the road or what the next guy, because I hate I could tell now, I could be behind a vehicle and it's usually an older vehicle. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, get the hell out of here. Wave my hand back and forth from my face. Like, dude, what are you doing being out on the road? Like I'm some yuppity guy or uppity, yuppie. I just put 2 words in one.
Yeah, there you go.
Gross. But anyways, but that was a common thing back when I was a kid. I'm lying. I know it wasn't every other car, but it seemed like every other car was just a freaking smoke bomb. And now it's rare.
It's rare to find those. Unless you're way out in the country or you're in an area with a lot of like diesel vehicles, you probably won't even see that. I want to say that the Department of Environmental, what is that, DEQ quality, they have certain standards for certain year vehicles,
Right.
and then they're kind of strict for the newer vehicles, and then in some cases, if you're like way out in a rural or way out of town, you'll see vehicles that they can get their license plate tags and never have to go through the quality check.
Well, I'm so old that I almost wanted to have a vehicle that was part of this
The exception
category, because it said if your vehicle is 20 years old, then you don't have to take it through DEQ. I'm like, hell, that sounds like a plan for me. Well, now if I have a vehicle that's 20 years old, that's a 2002. That's completely different.
Makes us feel old.
You know what I mean?
That doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
That sounds right. If I wouldn't buy, I wouldn't get into that. But in the 2000s, there was a lot of difference from in the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
90s started, but still the difference is I don't think that even flies.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if that rule even exists anymore, because out here it used to be if you have an old car that, in other words, old used to be 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 20 years old, we had a lot of environmental safety things put installed in the vehicles. So I don't think that works anymore. It must be like 40 years old, because I wonder if they cut it off. If you have I know that there was a couple years ago, they almost made it sound, they were trying to push, at least here in this beautiful Oregon state, that you couldn't even drive around some of ththose vehicles that were so old, because they emitted, so they wouldn't pass a certain requirement. And I gotta disagree. I mean, I don't think that a vehicle that's blowing smoke out the back, that just means something's not working correctly, and I get that. But still, an old vehicle that emissions aren't up to date, but isn't blowing smoke, should be still okay.
Think about the technology improvements to get the vehicles where they are today. Not only just like fuel efficiency and environmental quality, but like all the other safety standards and what we would consider as just, every car is going to get airbags. That's the way it is.
Sure.
The suspension, the way the tires work, the braking. There's so many improvements in vehicles. If you think about how bad cars were back in, I want to say 70s, maybe even into the 80s, like the quality control was really bad. Yeah, just, if you buy a classic, I won't say a classic car, but if you buy an older car and you want to actually drive it around now, a lot of people will go and customize, get new brakes on it that's like modern brakes, so that it's not a death trap when they're driving it around.
Everybody cares about going, but nobody gives a damn about stopping.
Yeah. Well, and then think about the, in terms of like the nuclear power plants. A lot of these were started, I guess Cold War era and beyond, where, I mean, maybe this was like in the early 70s, these things came out, and the technology has changed so much since then. It would be comparable to drive one of those cars. We've got this ability to really get quality control in place and make something very, very safe and way more efficient. You'll be able to produce lots of electricity with very, very little waste.
Right.
There's no CO2 going into the environment. You're not clear, there is some when you're trying to find the material to the radioactive material to create this. Yeah, there's some stuff that happens in the environment, but then the benefit of it makes that seem like it's a smaller thing.
I'm going to go backwards here a little bit. So I'm not going to get into, because it could be a whole nother show about talking about the gentleman that created, and I'm not trying to get whacked or get, commit suicide with 2 shots in the back of my head kind of a thing. But there was a gentleman back in good Lord, I'm not even going to say, back in the day is what I'm going to say, because I can't remember the date. But he came up with a vehicle that ran off of water.
Yeah, you had mentioned this.
And he was pushing it, and he brought it up to like some of the companies, and didn't go well. It's for him. So I don't know. I'll just say that. I'll just leave it as that. But there's other ways other than, all we talk about is electric, and all we talk about is gas, oil.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I want to point out there's two other things. And I'm okay with doing a little bit of effort, So I want to point out that it looked like it was some third world country, but this guy had a bike that he converted that ran off of water and wood. So I'm guessing it's a steam situation, But he was traveling along on this bike trike quad right thing, and I'm like, we have to be simpler. We're trying to go over the top all the time. We need to go backwards. And if I could dare go back a little bit, and I've pointed this out, maybe I just needed to hit the shop and try to make it myself and find out why it doesn't work or why it's not here myself, or create it my damn self and make some money. I would literally ride my bike back to forth to work, but it's about 20 miles. It's a little bit long, and it's not very safe for, I think going slower than the common speed could be a death trap. I want to be able to be up with
keep up with them.
So, but back when I was a kid, I used to have like the old, the BMX bike, and so when I wanted to go hang out with your brother and pedal from here, we used to be like a good 8 or 10 miles. That worked my ass off. I had to pedal back and forth, the whole way, worked my ass off to go see him. It wasn't worth it. So,
sorry, Tony.
No,
totally. Tony, you were totally worth it.
He might have been, but not with that BMX. But I went and got it. I think I was at the time they had 10 speeds was big in the 80s. But they had a 12 speed. Well, I used to pick berries at the time, and I picked berries all summer long. And I bought myself I think it was a 12 speed. I don't think it was a 15, but a 12 speed. And that was big time. And so what was cool about that is I could get over to hang out with your brother with a lot less effort. That's worth it.
Yeah.
Your brother was definitely worth a 12 speed. so to be honest with you, he was worth a BMX too, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, you changed the efficiency of the machine.
I just don't understand why you don't have. I don't care if you call it a trike or a bicycle or even I don't know what you call it, a quadcycle. But anyways, a car that's made out of a bike, and have it geared so that it's near. Bear with me. I'm going to say effortless, but effortless to get up to certain speeds. I don't know why we don't try for that.
I think we have. I think that the engineers out there have done an amazing job.
Not using electric.
Yeah, but of trying to make things efficient as possible, the least amount of lost energy possible. And there have been a lot of devices that have been invented that allocate it in different ways. There was I want to say it was like a trike or maybe like a very light vehicle. And they were using springs, and they were using a very small engine that didn't burn a whole lot of gas to wind this spring whenever it was basically stopped. And then it would unleash the spring to start to get it moving.
Momentum, right?
Yeah, because generally speaking, the most energy is used to first accelerate.
Absolutely.
It takes a lot less energy to maintain than it is to accelerate.
Absolutely.
And so there was this machine. I'd probably have to spend some time looking it up, but it was a very small engine that would wind the spring, and then that spring would get them up to speed, and they could maintain it for a relatively efficient, vehicle. There are others that you can see. There's improvements in transmissions in different vehicles all the time that they have special ways to measure how much energy is being spent at these different, RPMs, and figure out what the most efficient method of using those particular gears would be. There's also other materials beyond just the gears that they're trying to improve efficiency in, and like the bearings and some other methods of reducing the amount of friction between.
Frame alone.
Yeah, and you think about the Tesla. The Tesla has one gear basically.
Makes it badass.
And so there's so you don't have to worry about shifting.
Right.
It's just it's how fast can that motor turn at different different levels. And what's interesting is the engineering that goes into these Tesla motors is incredible, because you get to a point where how many RPMs are you getting up to? And this motor, that goes directly into the the rubber where it meets the road.
Right.
You know, you turn that motor, that's exactly what is happening to your tire. And at what point do you reach a top speed or a critical speed where it disintegrates? Have you ever seen people that put an old CD or DVD on the end of a drill?
Yep.
And spin that guy up and then watch it just completely shatter.
It met its maximum.
Yeah.
Revolution.
Yeah. And
can't even say it.
Yeah. And so there's different things that these engineers have to consider in all these things. But then there's the chemistry you were talking about, maybe there's some steam powered bicycle or motorcycle. Yeah. Of course, we had trains that were running on steam.
That's right.
And eventually it moved into burning wood, burning coal, because there's a difference in the chemistry. There's a difference in chemistry in these different things. You can get so much energy out of boiling water. You can get so much out of burning wood, so much out of charcoal versus regular coal. And then you start getting into other fossil fuels like oil, and then potentially like gasoline is a refined version of that. Natural gas. I mean, we're talking about the different properties of each of these things have different amounts of energy produced.
Well, this isn't why I brought this topic up, but we happen to be running through where I'm paying $4.89 because I'm a lazy ass and I like going to the place on my route home. I like going to a couple of these places and I like the people there to go get gas.
Yeah.
I know I could probably get it for a mere $4.39, but it's $4.89 a gallon. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care about other countries. I don't care about any other situation. I'm talking about America.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about our situation where it was $2. Maybe even under, but I'm going to say $2 is an average, or the places I go, and there's nothing that's changed other than an administration.
Yeah, an administration.
That decided to cut this or apply this or get rid of this, and it's double my cost, and that's a huge deal going back and forth to work, but.
Well, okay, so to your point about gas prices, I just was driving today, and of course, I don't see gas prices as often it doesn't catch my eye as often as it used to because I don't fill up anymore in my car.
Not your car.
Yeah, but as I was driving, I'm driving by even the inexpensive, like we have Fred Meyer out here. Fred Meyer has these little gas stations. We have a Safeway also. I think they have some gas stations, Costco. And then there's the standard Shell and Chevron and those
BP.
ones, yeah.
Oh, BP's still around.
Yeah, they are still. Yeah, they're pretty big. But it caught my eye because even some of the cheaper places like a Fred Meyer was still, I want to say, it was like $4.75.
Right. It's $4.89 a gallon, or if you have your little discount with your
shopper's card.
Your shopper's card, you could get it for $4.35. Are you kidding me? It's outrageous. It's a big deal because it's $200 more a month. And what if some people need to go get a job and they have to travel a long ways away? I'm fortunate that I'm only, I don't know, 18, 20 miles away. But that's a damn distance for me, too. It used to be worse, but I don't have a rig that's great with gas mileage. One of your rigs is...
Gosh dang it. Yeah, that thing sucks the gas. It's an old, what is it, 2008 Hummer H2. A dream car of mine, by the way. And we don't drive it hardly at all because I depending on how we're driving it, you might get between 8 and 12 gallons.
Well, if you want
or 12 miles per gallon.
If you want to go for some status, drive it around right now. Have the windows down.
That's right.
Have the AC on while the windows are down. Turn up the radio. Wave at people. They're going to go, man, you're loaded.
Yeah, right.
because it's sitting there idling is costing you dollars.
I brought up a little chart here about Oregon average gas prices. And it only goes a year back. Right now, their estimate, and this is, what are we, mid-March here? Current average for the regulars is $4.73. 1 year ago was at $3.
You're right.
That's a significant jump in such a short period of time.
It's truly huge.
Now, we're going to see this go over 5 on the average very, very soon. I don't see it going down at all because I don't see where the new oil is coming from. And some people cannot stop driving. Some people, this is the way they live their life, that you can't just, case in point, our kids, we got to take them to school. We got to pick them up. We can't just, there's no school bus in this case. There's no ability for us to hop on a bicycle and, all right, kids, load in the cart behind. There are things that we have to do, no matter what the gas prices are going to be.
Definitely different than when we were kids.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that the demand for gas, it may go down a little bit, but ultimately we're looking at a situation where people are still dependent on driving their vehicles, and I don't think that these prices are going to sink too low.
I will tell you this. I don't know if there's anything in the works about adjusting anything or doing anything, open up the Keystone Pipeline.
If they did that right now, it still wouldn't impact us on a positive way
not for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, we're minimum, in my opinion, which means shit. But my opinion is that in a quicker time than it would be if they opened up the Keystone, we're going to see $6 a gallon.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is right now, but mind you, diesel used to be cheaper than gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's almost $1 more. It's over $5 a gallon.
It is. So just looking at the average, so regular average is $4.73 approximately. Mid grade is $4.92.
Thank God I sold my freaking twin turbo vehicle that only needed
premium
every time.
Premium gas is at $5.13, and diesel is almost $5.40.
So get this, I have to point this out. My mom, she has a diesel truck, and I use it often for particular situations. I got to go haul something. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at getting some cabinets here and go down and pick up some cabinets, so I might need a big rig.
Yeah.
And she's particular, and I guess that there's some different types of diesel. Mm-hmm. So there's only this one place within like 30 miles radius that sells a certain kind of diesel that's better for the vehicle. I can't even tell you how much that freaking costs.
Yeah.
But that's where we have to go to get the gas for her. And mind you, her rig is a 2001.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Less than 47,000 miles on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to go put in some bullshit gas, sorry. Yeah. But you get what Mama recommends you get. And I'm like, okay, so now I have to actually literally, some people must do this. I can only imagine, truly, the truckers out there. Mm-hmm. Everything they do depends on this.
Yeah.
And so when I go, well, it's going to cost me an extra $100 for those cabinets that are blah, blah, blah cost.
Yeah, just for the fuel.
I have to, absolutely. Yeah. I have to consider that. It's outrageous.
When my car was in the shop, I had to take Uber. And I don't.
It's probably cheaper than taking the Hummer.
No, you might be right. But I don't like to take Uber when Uber started, it was great because I thought customer service was much better, and like the people were driving were not former taxi drivers.
Yeah, now, they need to have an Uber with bikini top drivers only. I think that's something.
So I don't prefer to take an Uber, but Tesla, when the car's in the shop, they'll give you a loaner or they'll give you Uber credits. Which is great because then I don't have to pay for it. But that gave me an opportunity to see what the cost. And the cost of the ride, and this was kind of an off hour. I want to say that it was like 10 in the morning, so it was outside of a rush hour time. There was no like concerts or big events going on. So this was probably a decent time. And it cost, I want to say, was it 15-mile drive, was over $50. I think it was almost $60. And then you want to add a tip on top of it. And I remember one night
it hurts me hearing it.
You and I went to a concert at Moda Center. Is it Elton John?
It sure was.
Yeah. So we got done with the concert, and of course I'm thinking we'll just take Uber home. I don't want to take the little Max train, the public train.
I don't want to get stabbed that night.
Yeah, exactly. And And so looking at the app at the time, prices were really high. Well, so
The timing, though.
Exactly.
Was part of it.
And so we went for a walk. I think did we go to like a McDonald's or something? And
I think there was this pay by the hour hotel we went to.
There was not. No, there wasn't. But we went to I think it was a McDonald's or something, and just hung out for a while, maybe grabbed a bite to eat, and then the prices on the Ubers went back down, and I'm pretty sure that we still didn't spend more than what I just spent the other day on the Uber. But that being said, all of this fuel stuff, there's a ripple effect with all other services, because every delivery truck, every big
from FedEx to
freight truck,
to Swift to I'm just using that as a big shipping company.
There's a cost in fuel, and all of those prices for delivery are going to go up.
Right. If you have a trucking company and to fill up, and I'm telling you, people, that it's not, if it costs $100 plus for you to fill up your rig, costs me $60 to fill up mine. Think about these giant, when you drive past a semi truck and they have these they look like there's 250-gallon tanks on the side of each side of the rig. They got to fill that son of a bitch up with that diesel fuel.
Yeah.
And they're not going to suck it up, their cost, rightfully so. They're going to pass it on to the people that are hiring them to do their jobs. And then they're going to pass it on to who? Us. It cycles all the way back around to us. And so therefore your cheese, your milk, your fuel, I know we're talking a lot about fuel, but it all raises the prices to all of that.
I was just looking at, how much does a semi hold in fuel? They're saying between 125 and 300 gallons.
Yep, that's
so
right.
What if we're just doing, we'll make the numbers somewhat easy. 200 gallons times it was what, almost 40 cents?
Oh my Lord, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to fill up that truck, it's over $1,000.
That's right.
That's incredible.
Right.
Just absolutely incredible.
And here's the difference. I'm going to throw it out there. It was probably closer to $500 to fill up that truck.
Mm-hmm.
That is
a few years ago.
Huge difference. Just a couple years ago.
Yep.
That's a huge difference, and that's a big impact on us, because it's not just one truck that comes back and forth dealing with it. It's a fleet, people. Just on the TVs you buy, just on the freaking BS gum you want to buy, anything you buy. These are not just one truck that goes out to feed the whole United States.
So you're talking about just trucking. Think about just what other products petroleum, fossil fuels create? Plastics.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a lot of other products that require these materials, these chemicals or whatever, to create that thing. So it's not just a matter of even delivery. It's the product cost itself is now going up because the oil is harder to come by. It's more expensive.
Oops, sorry.
You're kicking me.
Well, you had it coming, I imagine. It's weird. Like when I talk about going green, it always comes back to fuel. It seems like the fuel or oil makes this whole country exist almost, because we've all found out how, especially with, Canada and their I don't know what they called it, but the trucking convoy or whatever.
The trucker protests.
And what a impact it made on that country.
Mm-hmm.
And we already should know at this point as Americans what, the truckers bring to us. And no matter how pissed off you get, I'm one of them, because not all the truckers are great. Some of them are assholes. just like regular drivers are assholes. I get it.
People in general.
But what we rely on them, because they make a huge difference. And it seems like truly that you need energy to make this whole country work. And so I always go back to essentially electricity and what makes electricity or oil and fuel to make it go, because everything else is just a secondary. Food. Well, how are we going to get our food? Well, we're going to produce it in America. well, guess what? We might need some fuel to run the tractors and the machinery to create, to harvest it.
I think of it in terms of what is it that we have to go outside to get? What is it that we can produce here? I think the
only thing America produces without anything is babies. It ain't doing us any good.
Well, we were somewhat, I don't know if technically we're energy independent. Maybe it's the right term. I don't know. But when we were fracking, we were exporting more in oil than we were.
From the 2016 to 2020, we were at least on the way to being self-sufficient.
Yeah. And if we can be that way, we can be less dependent on, a foreign government like Russia. I mean, they're talking about cutting off some oil coming from Russia because we want to punish them economically for going into Ukraine.
And that's going to cost us higher than anything.
But it would cost us a lot.
Us meaning not just us civilians in America.
Yeah. Yeah, because the common people.
Right, because then we're going to have to really realize that, do we really want to go to the store? We're going to have to compact our... It's going to be so expensive to have these restrictions, or what do they call it? Sanctions on Russia, because it's easy for our government to put these sanctions on, but it fucks us too.
Yeah, there was a clip...
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, there's a clip of Biden recently talking about basically our inflation is, he's blaming it 100% on Russia, even though inflation started before Russia invaded. He's also blaming just Russia lining up on the border of Ukraine triggered people to know that there's going to be a scarcity and raise their prices. And of course, the whole thing is a lie. That's
sure
political speak from him. And
for me, it's nice for me to hear that from him, because to me, because I'm not an idiot, that I know that that's an acknowledgement of failure. Yeah. Because he's just blaming it on them, knowing that stuff happened the second he showed up in office.
There's going to be some people who believe the words that he's saying. Well, I hope that most people are seeing through it. But with that being said, that still then highlights the argument of, why are we dependent on other people, other countries? If you're going to make the argument that it's their fault that our prices are rising here, then why is it that you're not putting some attention here locally in trying to reduce the amount of regulations that cost people more money to produce stuff? The cost of labor is outrageous right now. It's very quite surprising that labor is so expensive, because we haven't really, yes, we've lost people to COVID, but really we have such a massive workforce available. We should be able to have relatively inexpensive labor.
We haven't hit rock bottom yet for us to figure it out.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're probably right. But again, this goes back to, why can't we, as a country, start producing more here and be less dependent on others?
So even during Trump's era, because when he was out there talking about China.
Yeah, China.
And he was right. But why isn't, like I'm an inventor at heart. And that doesn't mean necessarily that I have to come up with something that nobody's ever came up with.
Yeah.
It's, how can you make something else better than what it already is, too? And that means we already know that dealing with China sucks. So why isn't there a company? I can't step up. I've got nothing for money. I have no know-how or abilities to do it. But why isn't somebody in America coming up and going, I'm going to take the step up. We're going to be making, I don't know, TVs or anything electronical. We're going to be the people that are going to be doing that. Therefore, you don't need to go to them to buy those anymore. And just using that as an example.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so with that example, the reason that why a lot of people don't do that is because cost of labor, which is generally the biggest line item on a company's budget, is very costly right now.
Sure.
The other is what we're talking about, what this whole episode is really about, which is the environmental impact of it. There are so many environmental regulations, especially think about chip manufacturing. there are a lot of countries out there that can create these chips because they don't have the same regulation.
It destroys their country, not ours.
It destroys
and we
their
can go
environment.
forward with thinking that we're green and the whole world is green, but it'll destroy every other country. Have you seen India's dump?
I know.
Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Well, so so we're talking labor, we're talking about environmental impact. There's also all of the other regulations that go into businesses and all of the taxation. Right now in our culture, in the United States and in other places, there's this big push that, big business or any business is not paying their fair share in taxes. Well, what are you talking about? These are not individuals paying
fools.
taxes. These are companies that if there's a cost in whatever it is, if it's in labor,
paying taxes, if they're in our country, how about that's their tax? But they're producing something for us.
But my point is that these companies, if they have a higher tax bill come to them, how do they afford that? Well, they increase the price of the products that they're creating because they're going to pass that cost on to the customer. So ultimately, the customer is still paying more. So to your point about why don't we build TVs here or whatever product? It's because our government has all of these things that they've artificially made it too expensive to do this type of production.
I agree. But that being said, and I'm going to get to this is a two-parter.
Okay.
Here. So that being said is that like anything that comes up in the country or whatever you have to do, I don't care if you're making big cupcakes versus small regular sized cupcakes, they're going to be expensive at first. When more people are getting involved, going, wow, these people make big cupcakes. I like those big cupcakes. They're going to go, you know what? The cost is going to go down a little bit. So I get it. When you start out something that's going to be high, I get that. And
but that
after time, it could balance itself, I will say. But it also goes to show that nobody gives a fuck about the fucking green or the environment. Nobody cares. Nobody freaking cares.
Not enough people care. Someone cares.
The people like us, believe it or not, I do care. I mean, I don't have a smoke blowing out the back of my vehicle, and if the second I see something, I'm going to go have it fixed up.
Yeah.
I do care, but nobody's willing to spend the money or take the hit that it's going to cost them for several years before they could be off the ground to everybody's buying from them before they could bring costs down. Yeah. I know that also that if we cared about going quote green, then we would stop the drilling and the mill of however they do to get the certain minerals out of the lands in other countries that we get to sit here on our high horses and say, hey, we're going green while other countries are destroying themselves. But we get to pretend that the whole world is getting better because we're doing better.
Well, we probably produce some of the most green energy out there, and our regulations are pretty high to maintain a certain air quality or whatever it is. But if you're producing anything and you want it to get cheaper, then there's a few different ways to get there. One is improve your efficiency in manufacturing. Another is, you could introduce other companies. If there's a high demand for something and other companies jump in, there's going to be competition. And then there's a real demand, a real necessity to become more efficient and produce something that costs less because most people are pulled towards you for the price tag.
That's more reason why America should do it because we are capital.
Yeah. Capitalistic? Capitalists.
There you go. Thank you. I knew it, but I couldn't say it. But that's where I think it could pull itself through. Yeah. Because we are. In other countries, that's not how it's going to be.
Yeah. The problem is that we have artificial manipulators by government regulation that comes in and takes the free market.
Because I'm talking about caring about the whole environment that everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
And here's an example of, and it breaks my heart a little bit. But I understand both sides of it. I used to watch Shark Tank back in the day.
Yeah, I like theirs.
And people would come in and say, hey, I've got this great idea. And go, you do have a great idea. But what I want to do, I'll give you what you want, but I'm not going to keep it in America because few of them were heart set on keep it in America, especially when it came to veterans and employing them and stuff. They're like, I will give you what you want for your whatever they're asking for, but I have connections in China or I'll just say across the seas.
Yeah.
And we're going to bring this cost down. Well, because there's not as many regulations across the seas.
Yeah.
Because why? We don't give a fuck about it. Whatever they do is blah, blah, blah. They just have to produce what they need to produce. They can bring it over to us. We don't care about the atmosphere that they work in. They don't care because their regulations are less.
Yeah.
But all we care about is the dollar. And that's I believe is our failure to going green.
Well, the other is, there's a different standard of living, and people are used to making a certain wage over there that's significantly less than what we would make over here.
$8 a day or something.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of different factors in why it would be cheaper to go overseas, even though it takes so long to get it back to the States to even buy the product. If I'm trying to make a buck, and I know I have a good idea and I would like to sell it. It's worth here $85, and I can have people make it here, and it's going to cost $65 to make it, or I make it for $23 over there. I get it. Yeah, or $8.
I was being nice. Yeah. But and so I understand how that goes. But the point of that I'm trying to make is: are we trying to really make it green?
Yeah.
Are we trying to go? What's it worth? What are we doing? What's it cost to us? Well, are we really making it green? We're making it look like we're just making it's like, a drunken, wife-beaten, pile of crap, stealing rapist that wears a freaking Armani suit. He looks like $1 million, but is he?
Yeah.
We're trying to look like we're all perfect and doing well. But are we?
So
we're enabling the destruction of our world, maybe in other countries, but we're driving around on all these cars or doing all these things that are eating.
Let me pose something to you.
What you got?
And I know we're running over time here, but
we are.
Yeah, we're over an hour now.
How can that be?
Okay. Think about it in terms of direct pollution. Okay. Typically, wealthy people pollute less than poor people. If you go to most of the countries that are, they're not super modernized, relatively poor, there's garbage, there's sewage, there's a lot of environmental stuff. It's pretty bad.
Right.
In more, like the United States, we don't. I mean, yes, we produce garbage, but it's managed a lot different. The amount of pollution that we create is actually, considering the volume of people that we have, is pretty small. Think about what if we could improve the wealth of those poor communities in such a way that environmentalism or greenness could be a bigger priority. Because if you think about it, the reason that it's not a priority for them is because they're just trying to get by every day.
Right.
For us, we're getting by just fine, which gives us the time to even consider being more environmentally friendly.
Right. We have that privilege to do that.
Do you think that might be the method to become more green, at least outside the United States?
If I can, and I'm not trying to promote another company, but my wife years ago was talking about oh my gosh. Well, maybe I won't promote them because I can't think of their name. But essential oils. Okay? And I was like, well, there's lots of those types of oils out there. And a lot of these oil, mind you, I haven't dug deep to know if they're like some shady ass company that's like, but they went to some other countries trying to utilize their abilities to make a certain product that is healthy for us, and then also helps their own and pays them well, if you will, gives back to them and their communities to bring them up too.
Yeah.
And so they could have a less damaged environment. And so I think the biggest issue is everybody wants, if you're selling a product for $100 and you could get the cost, it costs, $10 to make it. They want to take that $90. They don't want to give back anything. They don't want to give back the $15 on that product to maybe help the local areas or help anything else. Or
there are some companies that are very philanthropic, but
I agree with you, but it's rare. But those are the things that I think needs to go back into making it right. Because I love my cell phones, but there's those batteries in it. Those batteries are a very big negative impact to our car, and when they're probably a bigger negative impact because Tesla's. I'm using them as an example. They're not the only ones out there right now, so I'm not trying to shame them. But when Porsche makes, Porsche makes their electric cars, they use these huge batteries, and they make a huge impact. But I bet you that all these car companies that do electric cars is less impactful as cell phones.
Cell phones, yeah.
And we all use them. And, we don't. I just hate the fact that we all want to go green, and people will sit there and talk about how green they are, how environmentally friendly human beings they are, and they try to go vegan and save the animals, and everything's perfect. And yet, you do realize that you're wearing a leather jacket, right? Or your shoes are made from over there, right? And your cell phones, plural, right?
And the iPad and
all this, it's be realistic, be understanding, and because I think that there's a way to be not necessarily green like everybody wants to be, but be less impactful on the planet. But I think people have just got to stop BSing themselves, because I feel that's what it all is. When people talk about going green in the U.S., I'm like, nobody's going green. They're just going outside of the U.S., it seems like.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't impact our community, but it's impacting somebody, which is our planet, which is only one of them.
Yeah, my guess is that, well, okay, number one, I'm far from being an expert in any of these areas, and I should learn a lot more. I learn a lot more about this, but my guess is that a lot of people do care about the environment that they're in. Right. I think, you go through Portland and you realize that people don't care because of all the trash.
It sure appears that way.
But in general, most people, they don't want to litter. They don't want to, dump old furniture at the side of the road. Generally speaking, most people are that way. A lot of people will even separate recycling from their garbage. They'll take bottles, separate those from, the cans. There are a lot of people who participate in those things. So I think in general, most people really do kind of want things to be environmentally good.
But I don't think they get it.
But yeah, I just think that unless it's convenient, people really don't follow through with it.
Well,
so how do you make it?
To be fair, I also don't think that they're selling it right.
Who's not selling?
Example, I'll use the electric cars as an example. They're trying to get more people out there to use electric cars to save the environment.
Okay.
Not because they're freaking awesome or cool technology and all this other stuff.
Okay, I see.
But they're pushing to go green.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if that's the best way to go green, people.
Compare the looks of a hybrid Prius with a Tesla, electric Tesla, and you go, listen, that you try and make the argument because it's such an ugly car. Sorry, Prius owners, but
I think they have to know that.
but you got to push the it's more environmentally friendly to that particular product. But a Tesla, you can totally talk about performance.
I think Priuses, just so you know, I think it's factual that Prius owners are virgins. Is that right?
We're going to get so much hate mail.
Are you kidding me? I think even the Prius owners are like, yeah, that there is true, actually. No, but here's the negative about it. Like, example, a Prius, the batteries don't last as long as the vehicles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they are at I won't even say minimum, they're about for $3,000. Mm-hmm. So when you have a transmission that goes out, you're like, oh my gosh, that's like about $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is an extra expense on a vehicle because they still have transmissions that go out, and they could cost them several grand. Well, this battery, when it goes out, and they will go out before their vehicles will go out, and they're $3,000.
Yep.
It's a huge extra cost because you still have to do your timing belt, which are over $1,000. I mean, it's just an extra thing to go mildly greener.
Yeah, it was funny. I was out doing track practice, and there's this. It's right along this really busy street, and so I'll get honks, and you hear people revving their engines and whatever. I heard this really, really like annoyingly loud vehicle drive on by, and I was like, thinking of it like a noise ordinance, thinking this has got to break that. And I look back, and it is a Prius. My guess is that those batteries died off a long time ago, and it's not using any batteries. They somehow bypassed the batteries, and it's just, and it sounded so loud.
Use my two cylinders.
It was so loud. It was like, you'd never guess that was a Prius.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I have zero negative thoughts to anybody that's trying to go out there and save the environment. I totally try to, as I have a burning barrel and I burn my trash. But I don't know.
You're out in the country.
You can weigh that out.
Yeah.
Whether or not your garbage is going to break down in, I don't know, 30 to 100 years. Yeah. The trash that I have, or I could burn it, go up into the atmosphere, and
let it rain back down,
and my trees will help. I really, truly, and this sounds funny. I can't remember exactly what Elon was talking about, but he said we're trying to bring down the CO2 or something in the air of America. I'm like, and there's like $100,000, or maybe it was $1 million bucks, knowing that guy.
Yeah.
To the people that have, I go, plant more trees. Yeah. I'm waiting for my check.
Yeah.
Because what if people started planting? I mean, literally planting trees in an amazing way. I mean, everywhere that you don't see, everywhere that's open, you plant trees. In 30 years, it'd be amazing, our quality of air.
Well, the Northwest has some pretty nice air, to be honest, because
really
we have, trees are abundant in this area.
And the loggers have
they have a sustainable cycle.
Right. But there was, I can't remember how many years ago, but there was something, I can't even remember the right words, but there was a law passed that for every tree that they cut down, they have to go out and plant new ones.
Yep.
And that's great. But I'm talking about going out there and planting them absolutely everywhere.
Well, you just don't know what that potential impact would be with other things, I suppose. Like if, there's a lot of open fields around that really isn't used for much of anything. People cut the grass and it just goes to waste. It's not like they're feeding cattle or anything with it. But I'm curious what that would look like, because trees require nutrients to grow, and I don't know what would happen if we decided let's just keep loading up the free space with trees. I don't know what that environmental impact might be.
It'd be I'm sure.
I think that the air quality, certainly. I think,
I
think about the Amazon.
I'll tell you this: if we all died, let's say in the next 2 weeks, every human being died.
Yeah.
All those places would end up growing with trees.
Mother Nature take over
and grow with trees and would make it all happen without us.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up. A little bit long episode today, but thanks for listening and hanging out this entire time. If you want to see the video version, you can catch us on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify.
That's right.
Just the podcast, you can catch us just about anywhere you can get it, your podcasts.
Yep.
So more information can be found at our website,
nevertooseries.com,
and send us an email
at mailbag@nevertooseries.com.
So until we see you next time, take care
and be safe, people.